Alright, Salute here. In this video, I'm bringing you a tier list for Season 26. So in this video, I'm going to cover all the best classes and builds for Season 26, so that you can be prepared for it. So right out of the gate, if you just want to see the tier list, here it is. So here's the overall list of how things are looking for Season 26 in terms of what is S tier, A tier. But remember, this does not necessarily mean that the class is the best for you, as it might only be good for some parts of the game that you might not enjoy. So I'm now going to break it down into 4 categories, and we're going to see which build comes on top in terms of different aspects of the game. So the first aspect we are looking at is solo speed farming. So this would be T16s and GR farming. How fast can you do T16s for keys and desperate? And also then greater farming. How fast can you farm GR90s? And also how quick and how fast can you do, let's say, a 110 or even higher. So to start off with, in the S tier, we have the monk. The monk will hands down be the best build for T16 farming, as nothing beats the ability to just dash around killing everything in sight. What you see on the screen is my monk here with 800 paragon, just a fresh character, and you can still just blast T16s like it's nothing. So this build here is definitely S tier in terms of solo T16 farming. And it's the same for solo speed farming for great rifts. It can speed farm at 90 in 40 to 50 seconds, and it can also go up to, let's say, 110s and do them in about 2 to 2.5 minutes. So definitely also an S build in terms of that regard. And next up on the list is the Crusader. The Crusader is very difficult to rank as it is actually an S tier in terms of GR farming, as it can clear really high and really efficiently. So in terms of greater farming, it's probably an S tier. But in terms of T16, it's definitely not anywhere near close to the monk. So it probably lands somewhere in the A tier or B tier. So it probably lands somewhere here between A and B. I'm just going to put in the A tier because it's that good for GR farming. And the build for solo GR farming would look something like this. So an LON bombardment build. So the Crusader is a pretty good one in terms of that. The next one on the list for solo speed farming would be the Demon Hunter. And that is also an S tier. And here's both the God build for farming T16 and low GRs in just a minute or even less. So it's going to be amazing for that. And you're also going to have the cold cluster for farming higher GRs. This build is going to be able to clear about 1/10 or so in 2.5 minutes. So it'll be amazing for that as well. And it's also the build I'm going to be playing, by the way. And the next one on the list is the Necromancer, and that is a B tier in terms of solo speeds. It is not the best nor the worst in terms of being able to farm T16s and GRs. And LOD skills and mage build is fairly okay for both of them. And the next one on the list is the Witch Doctor, and that is somewhere between a C and a B tier. I'm going to put it in the B tier. It can be pretty quick in T16s, but in terms of speed GRs, it is definitely lagging compared to the other classes above it, both in speed and how high it can clear. Next one on the list is Barbarian, and Barbarian is definitely an A tier. The Barb is actually pretty good for speed farming T16s. Not too far behind the God build in terms of T16 farming, but in terms of solo GR speed farming, is definitely an A tier here as well. It definitely farms somewhere between 100 and 110 in about 2.5 minutes, so definitely really good here. And then for the last class, the Wizard, in terms of also, of course, T16 and GR farming, I would also put that in the B tier, as it is okay. It does have a teleport, but it's not very useful. So it's an okay class compared to some of the others. It's definitely not the best. So that was the ranking in terms of solo speeds. So for T16 and GR speed farming solo, the next ranking we are looking at is the solo pushing. Basically, how high can a class push solo? I'm not going to show every 6 build or whatever that could be for every class. I'm only going to show you how high I rank the class in general, and then maybe I'll show you 1 or 2 of the strongest builds. To start with, the Crusader, definitely an A tier. It's probably going to push somewhere in the 140s or so. So not the strongest, not going to be up there with the S, but definitely not a bad build at all. It does also have other builds, of course, but the LON bombardment should be the strongest. And also A tier is, of course, the Demon Hunter. And this will be one of the strongest builds overall. But in terms of solo pushing, it is definitely in the A tier, because there are builds that are going to be quite a few tiers higher, but it will still be a really good and solid build overall for sure. The next class is definitely the Monk, and that is definitely an S tier. So the Monk is going to have 2 builds. It's going to be amazing for this. It is going to have the Earth Ally Monk. Now this might not be an S tier build, but it will definitely be A tier. It's a really solid build for pushing high, not very good for speeds and whatnot. But this combined with the fact that I also have the Wave of Light LOD build as well will definitely make the Monk an S tier build. This build right here will most likely be one of the highest pushing build in the entire game for next season. The potential for this build is just going to be amazing. And it's probably going to clear somewhere in the mid 140s if geared properly. So it'll be one of the best builds for sure for Season 26 when it comes to solo pushing. And the next one on the list is the Necromancer. And this by far going to be the LOD Corpse Explosion build. It's going to be the best here. And it'll be somewhere between A and S tier. It'll probably be an A plus tier build, but it's leaning more towards an S tier. And it's going to be really, really good for this. And next class is Witch Doctor. Witch Doctor is going to have 2 pretty good builds for this. It is going to have the Poison Dart build, and it's also going to have, of course, the Eric here Cop Spider build as well. So with these 2 builds, it is definitely going to be a really good class for solo pushing, and I would rank it in the A tier. And the same thing can actually be said about the barb as well. The barbarian is going to have the LOD holder barb, and also of course the new reworked raker, and both of them is probably going to clear somewhere between the 140 and 145. So they're both really solid builds for solo pushing. And then also the wizard is going to have the LOD twister build, which is most likely also going to be somewhere in the A+ tier. So we'll put it as a A for now. So in terms of overall ranking, in terms of all the classes, it's actually pretty balanced. There will not be a massive discrepancy between the best and worst class. Now there will of course be a big discrepancy between the best and worst build, but in terms of the overall classes, it's actually looking pretty good and pretty balanced for season 26. That's basically because we don't have something like the inner fire monk anymore, just blasting everything. If the inner fire monk was still a thing, it would basically bring everything down one tier at minimum. But because everything is now way more balanced, it's going to look like this. Now the next one we're looking at is group utility. Basically, is this a good class for groups overall? Can it be used as a damage dealer, a whiff guarding killer, or a support? And of course, most builds can clear 150s if you're in a good group. But we're going to look at the strongest performing builds for this. So group utility wise, if we start off with the Crusader, it is going to be pretty bad. I honestly don't really see it being used for anything high at all. It might have some potential for a Rift Guiding Killer, but compared to the other builds, it's not really that great at anything. Now next one is Demon Hunter, and that is definitely an S tier. The Demon Hunter is going to have two really solid builds for group utility. It's going to have of course the CDH, the support DH. Basically mandatory for any speed or high pushing groups, and it's also going to have the Marauder Cluster Arrow for 4-man pushing, which will also of course be one of the best trash killers in the game. So Demon Hunter is definitely up there in the S tier. The next one is the Monk. Now I place the Monk in the A tier for group utility. So in terms of 4-man speed GR farming, it will be really good, but rats will still be better, and therefore it is an A tier. And it will also be a pretty good RGK with guarding killer when it comes to 4-mans. There are still stronger builds, but it can definitely be used for a lot of group content as well. So it is definitely an A tier in terms of that. And next one is the Necromancer, and that is also in the S tier. Of course, there are rat ones going to be amazing for two things. You have the Sea Necro, and of course also damage dealers in the rat ones. And it's also going to be one of the best trash killers in the entire game with the LOD Scythe build. So definitely a lot of utility in terms of group play for Necromancer in season 26. And next one on the list is the Witch Doctor, and that is also in the A tier. Now for most things, it is going to be pretty bad. But in terms of 4-man pushing, it is going to be one of the best classes actually. Mondonugu will be one of the top contenders in terms of 4-man pushing as a trash killer. And then the Araki Witch Doctor, as you can see here, will be one of the best with guarding killers in the entire game. So therefore I have ranked it an A tier. Simply because of these two things here, it's going to be really good for 4-man pushing. So if you like 4-man pushing, you're going to have a really good time with the Witch Doctor in season 26. The next one is the Barbarian, and I'm going to put that in the A tier. Now, of course, a Barbarian is the amazing support. It's pretty much a go-to class for this. Unfortunately, none of the builds it will provide will be good for anything in terms of damage dealing or with guarding killing. So therefore, I put it in the A tier. But if you like playing the C-Barb, you're definitely going to have a good time as well, because it will be used for pretty much everything. And the same thing that I had before with the Crusader kind of applies for the Wizard as well. You probably won't see a whole lot of group play at all. It can be a fairly good trash killer, but compared to the other builds we have on the board, I would not really see it as a top contender, and therefore I would put it somewhere between the D and C tier down here. Now the next thing we're going to look at is the solo Echoing Nightmare farming. Now if you're a solo player, this is probably the most important factor that's going to determine what class you're going to play or what alt you're going to make fairly quickly in the season. So to start off with, the best build by far will be the Demon Hunter. Compared to every other class, this build's here ability to just completely destroy everything in sight. You have everything you need. You have Rave Clear, you have Screen Clear, you have overall really good damage. So this build here will be a complete blaster for season 26 when it comes to Echoing Nightmare farming. And if there was something higher than an S, I would even put it there, so an S plus or even higher than that, because it's going to be that good for it. The next class we're going to look at is the Crusader, and Crusader will probably rank somewhere in the C tier. You could either play something like the AoV Heaven's Fury and have a good screen clear but pretty low damage, or you could go for something like the LON Bombardment and have high damage but low wave clear. But no matter what, you're gonna lag in terms of something, so it's definitely somewhere in the lower brackets. And next class in terms of solo economic farming is the Monk, and that is an A tier. The Monk is gonna have two builds you actually use in the Economers. You're gonna have the Water Inner, of course. So if you're planning on starting a Monk for season 26, this would be a really good build because of course it's a starter set. And you can also farm everything you need basically. And it's also going to be pretty good up there in terms of solo economic farming. I can definitely clear 150s in a good and efficient time. And next build is the LOD Ring of Light build. This is probably the second or third best build overall in the entire game for this. And I'll probably say this is quite a bit better than the Inner Water Monk. But it's also very difficult to gear. So definitely play the Inner Water Monk early on the season, and then you can try and make this build later on. The next class is the Necromancer. Now for solo AQ Nightmare, it's not going to be that great. The Poison Lance build is probably going to be decent for it, but overall for solo farming, it's not going to be that great. In terms of group farming, it'll definitely be up here in the S tier. It's going to be used for rat runs, as rat runs going to be one of the best builds in AQ Nightmare farming. But in terms of solo farming, it's not going to be that efficient. And the same thing can actually be said about the Witch Doctor as well. Now the Barbarian will struggle a little bit with the early waves. It cannot clear to 100 really quickly compared to the other builds up here. But it's got a lot of damage and burst damage, so I'll probably put it somewhere in the B tier. As the new Waker Barb is going to have pretty good damage overall and decent wave clear. And the last class of course is the Wizard. And I'll put that in the C tier as well. Now the Wizard will have pretty decent map clear, but the damage will be overall low. So I can probably clear to wave 100 really quickly, at least compared to something like Crusader, but it will then stall out because the damage of it is just not very high. So if you look again at tier list overall, this is how it ranked of course from the start. I hope me breaking it down showed you maybe what you are going to look for in next season in terms of what is going to be good for you. So if you're a solo player, something like the Monk and the Demon Hunter is going to be really good for you. But the Witch Doctor will struggle a whole lot in terms of T16 farming, Greater farming, and solo AQ Nightmares as well. But if you're a group player, the Witch Doctor and the Necromancer is going to be really good for you. But like I said in the beginning, without the Soul Shards or Ethereals from the last 2 seasons, it is definitely looking a lot better and more balanced overall, as there won't be these huge discrepancies between the best and worst class. Now of course there are still some discrepancies between the best and worst build, as some builds can probably clear in the high 40s, as other builds might struggle at 130s. But I'll be interested to see what you guys are going to play next season. I'm definitely going with the Demon Hunter here. I'm going to be doing solo stuff on hardcore, so the fact it's going to be really good for solo farming T16s, Great Rifts, and AQ Nightmare is just really good for me. And also I love it for solo pushing. The Water Cluster Arrow is one of my most favorite builds for solo pushing, so therefore it's just an all-round really good class for me for next season. I hope I was able to shed some light onto what classes and what builds are going to be good for you next season. If you like this video, make sure to give it a like. And if you want to see more of my guides for season 26, make sure to check out the playlist here, as that playlist there will have the best builds and guides for season 26. And I'll see you in that video. Peace out, everyone.